Before we dig in, a quick thank you to the sponsors ready to grow with the Soil Sisters. Tejas Tonic is the official beverage of the Texas Soil Sisters. We especially love that the hemp for Tejas Tonic is organically farmed in the Texas Hill Country, with farms in both Dripping Springs and Lukenbach, Texas. The Soil Sisters podcast is powered by B&P Electric. Whether you're building, remodeling, installing low-voltage landscape lighting, or in need of an inspection, B&P is your Central Texas electrical contractor. Find links to our sponsors in the podcast show notes or head over to txsoilsisters.co. You're listening to the Soil Sisters podcast, where we dig in on family farming and ranching, regenerative agriculture, healthy living, and planting seeds in our community. We invite you to listen, subscribe, and grow with the Soil Sisters. Hi, y'all. I'm Joanna Newting, joined by my blood, soul, and soil sister, Crystal. Welcome to the show.
I'm so happy to be here with you today, sister. We have a great guest on that I have much respect for, and I am so excited to dive into conversations with Dr. Liz Haney.
Yes, Dr. Liz Haney, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yay.
Absolutely. We're excited to have you here, and when everyone hears your bio, they're going to be excited to hear you too.
Yes.
Dr. Liz Haney is a soil and ecosystem scientist, co-developer of the Haney Soil Health Test, and a co-founder of Soil Regen. She bridges science and practical application to improve soil function, farm profitability, and environmental resilience through regenerative agriculture. Liz also co-founded Regen Mills, Heritage Ground, and Farmers Reserve Distillery to help create value chain solutions that reward farmers for improving the land. She works collaboratively across the agricultural spectrum to promote flexible, scalable, regenerative practices and market opportunities. We love what you do for this industry, Liz. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So let's start off the conversation with the thing that most people have probably heard of. If you're considering off-ramping from conventional to regenerative agriculture, or you're already deep into regen ag, somebody has asked you before if you have had a Haney soil test. So would you mind telling us your why and how it was developed and how it's evolving?
Yeah, so my husband, Rick Haney, was in graduate school. He went back to graduate school because he had been a farmhand all his life and seen the people that he worked for and his family have a hard time, maintaining a profit or making a profit at all, because growers have no control over commodity prices or input prices or the weather. Unfortunately, we all know that.
Yeah.
So he went back to school to study microbiology and started learning more and more about how to measure microbial activity and then compare that to nutrient cycling, like nitrogen release, nitrogen mineralization, and was really just working to try and figure out a way to save the producers money on their input costs. I went to graduate school. I started graduate school and he wooed me into helping him with the test. So I was alongside him doing research in graduate school. And then we both, got jobs after school, and he continued to develop the soil test. I went and worked for mine soil reclamation. But when I left that, I went to work alongside Rick, and we kept developing the test further and further, the different extractants that are used and comparing them to standard extractants, and then figured out all the different components of the soil health test so that we could determine soil health. So it was a long process over probably 10 or so years, 15 maybe, before it really went into commercial application.
Well, and most good things do take their time and simmer and get better and better. And then, you have something that's really been tried and tested and ready to share with the world. So talk to us a little bit about the differences between when someone's getting a conventional soil test versus the Haney soil test.
Yeah. So conventional testing looks at just physical and chemical aspects of the soil. It doesn't look at any of the biological aspects of the soil. The Haney test, we want to really mimic what's happening with the soil biology in the field when it rains water and when you have plants growing in the soil. So our extractants are water because it rains, water, and the other extractant is comprised of organic acids, which mimic plant root exudates. So we can see how those plant root exudates are dissolving nutrients for the plant to take them up. And that's what we measure in the laboratory. We also measure soil biology by measuring microbial respiration. Microbes take in oxygen and give off carbon dioxide, just like we do. So the more active they are, the higher their respiration. We look to see how much food source they have. They don't hopefully eat on your total soil organic matter. So we measure water soluble organic carbon to see how much food there is. So that's what the microbes act on. When they're chewing and growing their population, they eat up that carbon and release nitrogen and phosphorus and other minerals to your plants. And so that's what we're measuring in the laboratory. And standard tests don't encompass all of the biological function plus the chemical function of the soil.
So, what are the benefits of a farmer? Because I'm sure it costs a little bit more to do a Haney soil test, but what are the benefits of doing this more robust soil testing versus just the conventional that they typically do?
So, when we look at a Haney soil test with a producer, what we try to do is really balance out the soil. So, we want to make sure that the carbon and nitrogen ratios are good so that we have good microbial activity and the release of nitrogen to the plant. We look at all of the micronutrients and the balance between them. We can talk about those and see where there might be limiting factors as far as nutrient use efficiency. We look at everything within a biological system. And if you're farming a biological system. So once we can optimize that balance in the soil, we can really optimize nutrient cycling. But one of the greatest things that you can get right off the bat, yes, it is a more expensive test, but you don't have to do it at the same scale as you might do like grid sampling. But we can save you right off the top, on average, 30 pounds of nitrogen per acre, which can be, depending on how much nitrogen costs, around $30 an acre. So it really does make a difference when you're farming at scale or even on a smaller scale in nutrient applications alone.
I love
Yeah.
that because people don't understand the biology is what is giving the plants the available nutrients that they need. And the more of these chemicals that they put on the field, the less biology there is in the soil. So the fact that you could save them $30 an acre, if somebody's, farming 100 acres, that's $3,000. So maybe your soil test cost like what $300 would be. I mean, I think that savings just makes sense in of itself. And also to give you the idea, like right here in front of you, these are the things that these are the chemicals, these are the nutrients that the biology need in these balances. And when you use the inorganic and that just kills all the life that you could have had if you had a little more information. So I really appreciate that y'all are doing this, because really the tests that you send to Texas A&M is, I mean, it really is mind-boggling how limiting it is and how they're not embracing more of your test and what you're doing. So anyway, thank you for y'all getting together and doing that. And I think it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, we're glad he was able to woo you.
Me too.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the test is really only $60, and you can do that on a composite of 50 acres or 100 acres. So the cost savings is pretty tremendous.
Exactly.
So
60 bucks. I
yeah,
said 300. But if you're saving
yeah,
3,000, then now 60
mhm,
is just like, that's nothing.
Yeah.
that's right. And what we want to do, I mean, a lot of producers still need to use fertilizer, but we want to put out the right amount of fertilizers so that producers can have a robust yield while at the same time reducing inputs, which is better for their pocketbook and water quality, nutrient runoff in the environment. And you're right, when you put out too many chemicals, it can definitely hamper the biological activity, and then we become more and more dependent upon chemical inputs, and then that just puts us in like a rat race where we're not ever getting ahead.
Race to the bottom that costs
Yeah.
more and more.
Right.
So, based on the work that you've done, if somebody does want to start weaning themselves off of these fertilizers, just like whenever somebody's getting off antidepressants or something and, their doctor helps them titrate off of them, what are we doing to help farmers titrate off of these fertilizers?
Well, there's so many things. The easiest is one, the nitrogen, and we've talked about that. But also, once we can look at their soil and get it more in balance where the microbes are more active and they're doing all of that nutrient cycling for you, we can cut back further on not only fertilizer inputs, but also herbicide, pesticide inputs, because your soil is now going to take care of all that stuff for you. I'm not saying that we're saying you won't ever have to use them again, but you can significantly cut back. And then also, if somebody's moving from a conventional to a regenerative system, we start with the baseline test. We talk about their management practices, even like equipment restraints, that kind of a thing. But let's say they have low biological activity. There's lots of different ways to improve that. And some soils need like a jump start from a biological. Some soils need compost additions, humic fulvic acid additions. There's lots of different things out there to help get that soil in balance so that it's functioning exactly how you want it to. So you have that great yield at the end of the year without using so many inputs.
That actually brings us kind of to the next phase of our conversation about the need for flexibility in regenerative agriculture, because like what you're saying, it's not one size fits all. Everyone's got different soil types, different levels of microbial life, or, how much fertilizer they've been using. So I think a lot of farmers who have been going the conventional route for so long, it's easy. They're just looking at NPK and, just make a decision and they go with it. But regenerative agriculture is more of a dance with nature. And so, I'd like to talk a little bit about how you are seeing farmers, finding this balance and accepting the fact that we have to work in harmony and we can't just, slap down some fertilizer and get what we want.
Yeah, there's a lot in there. So back up to the flexibility piece. Every producer, we work with producers from coast to coast up to Canada. Everybody has a different climate, context, different crop, different weather year by year. And so we have to be flexible in our approach to regenerative agriculture, but to agronomy in general. I mean, these people need to make a crop, they need to make a livelihood. And so we don't want to put any really restrictive definitions on regenerative or what they need to do year by year to improve the soil. And I've gone through and asked leaders of regenerative agriculture from Rick Clark, Ray Archuleta, a whole bunch of different people, what is your definition of regenerative agriculture? And they're all different. And I can tell you that really, really frustrates some people. And I'll give you an example of that. I sent out a email blast about a webinar we're doing on spring fertility, planting, and foliar applications mid-season. And somebody wrote me back and said, that's not regenerative at all. you can't put out fertility or foliar applications. I didn't say it was necessarily a fertilizer foliar application. It could be a biological. But
Mhm.
like with this mindset, if we have a restrictive mindset and we don't treat each producer individually, because each producer does have completely different circumstances, then we are going to restrict the scaling of regenerative agriculture. And in order to improve our environment, in order to improve producer profitability, and in turn, the health of rural America and everybody really with nutrient dense food, um, we're going to have to scale to a level that's much greater than what we have right now. But if we go in and put a hamper on somebody, I mean, it's like shoving a pillow over their head and telling them to get up and walk off and breathe. We can't tie their arms behind their backs. We have to be really context specific.
Well, and I think that's so much a
Yes.
part of this regenerative movement is that we have to allow people to be where they are and to take the steps that they can take easily in the direction of what they want. And if they're encouraged and they feel good about that, then they'll take a little bigger step and a little, I mean, it just gets bigger. So it doesn't matter. And I tell everyone that we talk to, whatever you're doing is fine. We can tweak. And by tweak, I mean make little changes that are easy to accept and to continue to do. Because if you make some huge sweeping change that you then can't keep up with, or that's too much for you, then you've not done yourself any favors. So just tweaking what you're doing and letting it be okay what has been done and what you had to do to get where you wanted to go.
Yes. And I've seen some people be encouraged by outside forces to jump in and change all their equipment, put up fence and start rotationally grazing cattle when you've never even had a cow. Just full on do it all now, and they end up failing. And then they're
Yeah.
discouraged and they either lose the farm, which is the worst case scenario, right?
Yep.
Or they're completely turned away from regenerative agriculture, period. And we don't want that to happen. We're regenerating the soil. We're not meeting some definition.
Amen.
Nowadays, finding time for in real life connection is a challenge in and of itself. So, I talked to Crystal about a modern spin on the classic farmers co op, and we'd be delighted if you join us. The concept is pretty simple: give $5, receive support. You donate $5 or more per month and gain access to the Texas Soil Sisters Co op monthly online meetup. This is a private but open dialogue where you can bring questions and receive support from our growing community. Maybe it's questions about industrial hemp production, or you're looking for land, or maybe a land steward, or connecting with alternative land use opportunities. Maybe you're in the beginning stage of off ramping from conventional ag like we are. We love passing along the powerful education we're receiving and helping other soil sisters and misters like you find solutions. So, if you're a gardener, land steward, farmer, rancher, or limited resource landowner, you're invited to join us on our monthly co op call with your donation. Sign up at txsoilsisters.co/grow. These monthly meetings are not recorded. They take place on the third Monday of every month at 6 p.m. Central Time. Sign up at txsoilsisters.co/grow. And also, when you do those little incremental things and you start seeing results, then you get more excited and more encouraged. When we talked with Wayne Knight with Holistic Management International, the idea of, okay, let's choose our best piece of land and, whatever this one thing is, let's start there. instead of trying to fix everything at once, or taking, your worst piece of land and trying to use that as an example. At the end of the day, we want to make money. We want this to be profitable. So when you take those baby steps, making sure that those first ones that you're taking are going to give you an opportunity to see financial growth as well as, growth in your soil health and your ecosystem.
Yes, 100%. And we've even told producers, like, if you don't feel comfortable with this, because your neighbors are going to look at you funny, you know, put it back away from the road where nobody can see it, and then try it out. My neighbors all think I'm weird anyway, so I don't have trouble with that. But yeah,
Well, and Crystal and I, when we're driving home to the ranch, it's a 5-hour drive, and we'll just pass by different plots of land and, like, let's look up who owns this piece of property. This would be a great field. It's on a great stretch of 183 where it would just be a wonderful example for people to see. And so, yeah, we love the idea of having it next to a highway where everybody's like, whoa, this looks totally different than all of the land around it. What are they doing?
yeah. Sometimes though, the neighbors don't like that so much. I have a
Well,
lot of producers that the neighbors think they're insane because they grow these what are they think look like weeds, but it's cover crops. It's just
That's all right. It won't take long for them
yeah,
to recognize that they've got something going on and they're interested.
that's right.
so how often would someone get the Haney Soil Test? Are we doing this before we plant anything, anytime? Is this annually? What's the suggestion?
If you want to get the most benefit from it from a fertility standpoint, then I would take it a couple weeks before you're gonna, purchase your fertilizer and before planting. If you want to really, really nail down, you can also do mid-season testing to see if you need to do any applications mid-season. But if you're just trying to monitor your soil health and see how your management practices might be improving soil health, then we recommend to take it once a year, about the same time every year. And generally, I recommend spring. Some producers can't do that if they're really far north, but here in Texas, you could sample in the spring, which is what, February here? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So take a sample in the spring, and then when I say about the same time every year to see how your soil is functioning, I mean like the same temperature, the same rainfall, just the same climate every year. And then you can start to see and monitor, okay, I'm improving my microbial respiration. My carbon to nitrogen ratio is getting more in balance. This thing I did worked, or I need to tweak it some more and do something a little different. So it can really help you change your management decisions over time, even if you're not using it for fertility recommendations.
Copy that. We have 30 acres that we are doing a show and tell experiment with our family of transitioning from the conventional model that they've been using our entire lives into the regenerative model. So we had planted industrial hemp last spring, and we didn't use any, we went cold turkey. We were like, a drug addict that just, because we didn't have the money to buy fertilizers anyway. So we were just cold turkey. And then in the fall, we planted a cool season cover. And then next week, we'll have a warm season cover going in. And then this fall, we will have our first cash crop that we're planting. So we definitely want to get the Haney Soil Test now so that we can watch the progress that we know we're going to make.
That we can already see, actually, which was so thrilling for me because there is zero organic matter in the soil at the ranch. It's a sandy loam, but literally it's just there's nothing there. And just looking at the fields, we had 3 different fields. There was a 50-acre hay grazer farmed conventionally. They planted that right at the same time that we planted our hemp. And so one field, 50 acres conventionally done, and then one that we did, another 50 acres that we did regeneratively, and then this 30 acres. And so now the 50 acres has been left alone, the other 50 acres has been left alone, and we have planted a cover crop. And it is so brilliant. I can see with my eyes. First of all, our rye, our cover crop, there was a mix, but there's like rye and vetch, and some peas are coming up. We've gotten some rain recently, so I'm excited and hopeful that those peas and vetch came around a little more. But in the other field where we had grown regeneratively, there's some little grasses coming up. And there are some weeds, but it's more grasses than broadleaf weeds. And in the field, conventionally farmed, broadleaf weeds are all over the place. And so it's just like I can see the progression, the succession of the plants from those first earliest succession broadleaf weeds and that kind of stuff, and then these little grasses, and just that a little amount of time. And it's very visible in those 3 different fields. And we didn't even mean to have an experiment, but we do. And it is just like I am giddy. And even though stickers took over our hemp crop, I think if we'd have planted it earlier, we would have had a better chance. But things kind of happened quickly, and we didn't have the time to get it done. But anyway, it is just like I don't care. I don't even care what fails, because I can see clearly we are making progress, and I just know that as good as it is this year, it'll be even better next year. So anyway, I am highly encouraged, and I can't wait to have a test of our soil and kind of see where we're sitting and what we need to do.
Yeah, I love that. And I've seen, through regenerative practices, especially in like pasture situations where the native grasses start coming back, because that soil is getting back into balance where those native grasses should be, right? And so they now have that soil health that they can start to germinate and come back and dominate like a pasture. It's incredible how nature just knows exactly what to do.
Yes, we saw some little, and it was so beautiful. It was just like a little bunch, and it was short, 2 or 3 inches tall, like bright, vivid green. And so I'm looking around and I'm like, what is that? Was that part of our cover crop? And so, of course, I'd take a picture of it and use my little phone app to tell me what it is. And the first thing that it says it could potentially be is buffalo grass. And that is what my dad wants so bad. He wants the buffalo grass back. And so I was just giddy at the idea that in one season we are supporting those native grasses coming back to this land that he hasn't seen in years. So that was just another success moment that I felt. Really, just small successes make me so happy, and that was definitely one of them. Buffalo grass.
So when we are getting the Haney Soil Test, I know we've talked about this before. I don't think we've talked about it during this podcast session. What are the steps? What is the recommendation of taking the soil sample and packaging it and getting it to the lab that you use, Liz?
Yeah, so I recommend that you take a composite sample on no more than 100 acres, but that's going to depend on how variable your soil is. Sampling for a Haney test is a little different than a conventional test. You don't need to take it at near a high intensity. We recommend you go out and take subsamples. So you can walk out in the field with a bucket and either your spade or if you have a soil core, and pull samples from 0 to 6 inches, because that's where the majority of the microbial activity happens. Take probably 10 of them in a 50-acre field or 10 in a 100-acre field, put them in the bucket, mix it all together really well, and then you can put it in a Ziploc baggie, label it really good. You can download a sample submittal form off the internet, and then ship it off 2 or 3 day shipping with your sample submittal form, and you'll get your results back in about a week or 2.
How much should we send to you? Like a cup?
About 2 cups.
Perfect.
I do about 2 cups, but don't send them directly to me. I have farmers do that a lot.
No.
You need to send them to lab.
To Regen Ag Lab.
Yes, we use Regen Ag Lab out of Pleasanton, Nebraska. If they come to my house, I just hold the bag up and stick it to my forehead and see if I can intuit anything out of it, but it's not quite as accurate.
Oh, that's funny. I love it. Okay, now what about soil temperature when we're taking these tests?
Yes, we like the soil temperature to be above 50 degrees Fahrenheit. You can take like a meat thermometer, put it down in the soil about 3 inches and see what the temperature is. That's because when it's really, really cold outside, the microbes are dormant, and we want to see what the full potential of what the microbes are going to do when your plants are growing, in a warmer season. So we want to take the soil samples over 50 degrees, and then you don't want to take it, in August in Texas because our soils are just way too hot. So we want a more moderate temperature. Just think about if you're comfortable, they're comfortable. It's that same kind of temperature that we all like.
All right, I dig it. Now, once we've started making these changes and embracing this regenerative model, obviously there has to be some sort of profitability payoff, for people to want to continue to do that. And so, when I read off your bio, I talked about you being one of the co-founders of Regen Mills, Heritage Ground, and Farmers Reserve Distillery, where you are building a regenerative market infrastructure. And that's one of the things sister and I are so focused on is, creating these local food systems and creating the local farming economy. So, can you talk a little bit about the story behind the decision to found these companies, and then we can get into, what it is and what they're doing?
Yeah. So there was a guy that was going to start a regenerative mill, a stationary one. And there were a bunch of producers that were growing heirloom non-GMO corn and wheat for this mill in a regenerative way. And well, to start a mill like that takes a lot of funding, right? So it just didn't happen. So my business partner, Russell Hedrick, was like, I can build a mobile mill, and we can put it in a trailer, we can hook it up on farm, we can mill it. So we took a group of producers that maybe had been left by the other mill falling apart, to come together, and we all invested in building a mobile mill. So now we have one mobile mill currently being used, and we have another one in production. Everything is farmer owned. We go in and mill their corn, wheat, whatever it might be, and then that's their product. They just pay for the milling process. They can market it themselves, or we can help them. But we really wanted our producers to get the benefit, cost wise when they're selling their product from doing regenerative practices. And a lot of our regenerative growers are using different types of crops within their fields, the heirloom corns like Bloody Butcher or anything. So then stacking on top of that to create even more revenue for our producers and our farmer friends is we just started Farmers Reserve Distillery. So we use the same kind of thing, heirloom non-GMO corn to produce our bourbon. And right now we have a bourbon in production that was from Dave Brandt's corn, and he passed away a couple years ago. So it's pretty special that we get to make a bourbon with his product.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that is very cool. So this is like a co-op based opportunity. So we're keeping the overhead low and also keeping this regeneratively farmed commodities away. They're not touching these other things where you might send your meat to the packing plant and not be sure you're getting the same stuff back. So it's great that you have this mobile device. So is this in Texas? Is it in Central Texas? Like kind of what's the reach of the mobile mill?
So the one right now that we have is in Indiana, and then the second one is going to be in Kansas. Our distillery is a Texas company, but we are custom distilling out in North Carolina right now. So the mill's kind of all over, but if a producer is interested, we can pull it down. It can be run pretty much at any farm as long as they have 2 RV hookups. We made it for the farmer. All of this is not for us. We're doing this for our producers so that they can get the value added benefit. And we have tried to scale, even statewide with food companies and things like that. And there's a lot of intricacies in the food supply chain. So, like you were saying, you don't know what kind of meat you're getting back. We're very interested in transparency and traceability and trying to set up that food chain where it's completely transparent from the producer or the farmer to the consumer is a little bit difficult. But when you go to this scale and you're on farm, the consumer is going to know exactly who they're getting their flour from, what that family does on farm, what their practices are, because all these people are very excited about sharing their story.
Yeah. So, how does a farm get involved if this is interesting to them and they want to be a part of the Regen Mills Farmers Co-op, so to speak? How do you get involved?
They just call me or email me and let me know they're interested.
All right. And so you said it's based in Kansas and Nebraska right now. If a farmer's in Texas, is that doable, or do we need to get a larger number of farms in Texas involved in this before Texas can have one?
I would say, one thing, if we had a group of Texas producers that wanted to get together and all mill at the same time, that would be doable. If there's enough producers willing that are interested to come together and invest in building another mill that would be based in Texas, that's also a possibility. We don't take outside funding from people that aren't involved in the process. So we don't have any venture capital money. It's all farmer owned. All the farmers own the mill together. We all work together. So, it's really a grassroots movement. If the producers in Texas want to get together, then we can do this for sure.
I love that.
Okay. Now, you've mentioned Regen Mills. We talked about Farmers Reserve Distillery. What is Heritage Ground?
So Heritage Ground is the platform that we're building, basically an online shop. So farmers are really busy. A lot of them don't have the time to market their own products. And so we're creating this web platform that we can upload it for them and help them sell their products. So they can be in the field, doing what they need to do.
Yes. And, storytelling is so powerful. And it doesn't matter what industry I've worked in, whether that was cannabis or hemp or now regenerative agriculture. Every conference I go to, the importance and need for consumer education is always the thing that people are talking about. If consumers understood the situation, then they would want to consume sun grown cannabis or use full spectrum hemp or eat regeneratively grown food. So I love the fact that it's farmer owned, farmer run, and these farmers can share their stories. What are some of the things that you're doing to help with the consumer education piece so that we can really get this supply chain moving?
Yeah, so I'm really excited. I started last year. I had like one farm to table dinner. For a couple years now, we've done regenerative beer. So we'll go to a brewery and talk about soil health and try to really teach the consumer. I hit the craft beer market because the whole reason I'm involved in soil science is backwards to me being a bartender, but that's another story. So, but craft beer drinkers care about locality. They want to know where it came from. They want to know if their water's clean because that makes good beer. And so I saw it as an in to start teaching the consumer about what my farmers are doing. What we're doing now, I'm really excited about. On May 3rd at Barrow Brewing Company in Salado, Texas, we're having a regenerative revival. So we have regenerative meat from one of my farmers, Thousand Hills Farms. They're not based in Texas, they're out of Minnesota, but they're providing regenerative beef. We have regenerative goat coming from right here in Central Texas. And we have famous chefs and one famous country musician, Brandon Ryder, who are going to be cooking these. And so people come in and purchase a plate made with local vegetables, this regenerative meat. They can hear live music all day. We're doing 2 beers, a cream ale and a blonde made from regeneratively produced malt out of Loveland, Colorado, which is root shoot malting. And then we're going to have soil health talks, soil health demonstrations, where the consumers can really start to see where their food's coming from.
I'm very excited about this.
That sounds like a very good time. Me too.
Yes, I put it on my calendar this morning. So I
I
saw
did too.
one of your Facebook posts and I was like, okay, I'm about this.
Yeah.
Tell us, it looked like it was a free event.
Yeah, so the event,
Is that correct?
yeah, the event is free. Anybody can show up. You can RSVP if you want to, just to let everybody know you're coming. You can pre-purchase a regenerative food plate for $25, or you can buy one on site when you get there. It'll be a little bit more expensive once you're there, just so we can account for the food. We're trying to get everybody to pre-register for that. But all of the talks, the music, hanging out at the brewery, everything's free except for the plates.
And that's so great because we want everyone to understand the value and the importance of this regenerative movement. And it's nice that it's something that can just be a free event. You show up, you learn something, you have a great time, and your eyes are opened to something that you hadn't really thought about before. I feel like so often people don't think about where their food comes from.
Well, we've been conditioned into that since the 50s, and also wanting cheap food and not wanting to pay the farmer for what it's actually worth. So I really love the idea of showing the value and feeding them the food. Like, taste this. And now, because once you've tasted food you've grown in your own garden, it's just different than food that you buy at the grocery store. This is an excellent show and tell, and I was already looking at the speaking that's going to be happening. I'm about it. We'll see you there.
Yeah, it's really great, especially to taste the flavors of regenerative food. It's so different. I recently started hunting and I shot a deer off of some conventional land. And then I went to one of my farmers' operations and I shot a deer off of one that was coming from a big regenerative farm. And the meat quality was so different. It tasted so much better off of that regenerative. So, like, you can taste that nutrient density. We're made to taste the nutrient density. That's how we know what food is good for us.
Absolutely.
Yes, I'm very excited about this event. So, if people want to learn more and go ahead and pre purchase a meal, what's the website? Where do they go?
You go to www.agsoil, SOIL, Regen, REGEN.com. And our events are listed on the front page, and you can find that event and just sign up.
Perfect.
All right. Okay, so you are collaborating with a lot of people in a lot of areas. You're certainly doing your part, Liz Haney.
Yes, you will.
So, will you talk to us a little bit about this collaboration across the ag spectrum and where you're seeing the value of this and how this kind of helps multiply the efforts that we're all doing?
Community is just completely central to everything I do, everything we do. We're in a small space within agriculture, and we don't, we're not the Cargills and I'm not talking crap about anybody here. It's just we're not big. So it's going to take all of us working together to really help the producers. And not all of us know everything. I don't know how to set up a planter. I'm a soil scientist. I don't, crop scout. I'm not an agronomist. So it takes everybody working together and bringing their knowledge together to really, really help everybody and move the whole entire system along.
Are there certain places, watering holes online, conferences that you're like, if you want to have your finger on the pulse of what's happening with regenerative agriculture and build your community, you should attend this event or check out this website or join this Facebook group?
Yeah, well, there's tons of Facebook groups. Everything Cover Crops is awesome. We host events at different places throughout the country. There's lots of other people that do. One really good one is No Till on the Plains in Kansas. There's also High Plains No Till, which is in Colorado, which is really great, especially if you're a farmer up in the Panhandle in that dry, arid region. There's a lot of producers there that have experience with that to listen to. Come to our event on May 3rd. But there's also lots of online webinars and YouTube videos. Really, I think once you start scratching the surface, you'll be able to find all that.
Thank you for those recommendations. You know, you being a soil scientist, you're all into research. So, what do you see right now on the horizon for the research and education piece as far as soil health and regenerative agriculture and profitability for farmers? Like, you know, kind of what's got you excited lately?
What I really like is that there's more soil tests out there now that we can stack on top of the Haney test and get even a better picture of what's going on. So there's a test called the phospholipid fatty acid test, PLFA, and it tells us like fungal to bacteria ratios. It tells us what your total microbial biomass is, whether you have protozoa, which are responsible for nutrient cycling. And when we start to look at that coupled with the Haney test, we can really start changing. Okay, you might need to use this product which promotes protozoa development in life, or you need to reduce tillage because your fungal population's reduced. There's also metagenomic testing. We've been able to see where different regenerative practices changes the microbial community into a more resilient community, one that does more nitrogen cycling, phosphorus cycling, all of those things. And so, really dialing in using better tests and newer technology and combining them all together, we're getting to see a really great picture of what's happening in the soil and in the plant tissues. That's been really exciting. And then, as far as research goes, I mean, there's so many different aspects of regenerative agriculture, from biologicals to supply chain research to consumer preference research. That's where that whole community comes in, because it's really starting to stack on each other so that we can get a bigger picture of how to move the whole country forward in regenerative.
Amen. Well, Liz, is there anything that we didn't ask you that it would be important to round out our conversation?
I just think that if the people listening to this want to learn more, come to an event. Start looking for events near you. Reach out to me. I'm more than happy to help direct people in the right direction. I'm more than happy to help them myself as well. But just really start reaching out to the community and start finding some people around you, and you get that support network. And then it just snowballs. And then you have this like huge, loving, regenerative family, and everybody's, picking each other up and moving each other along. And that, I think that's really important.
That is the main theme of that goes through all of these conversations, is the support in this community and how we love life and we want to support life in the soil and in our gut and in our animals and our plants and in our community and in each other and our families. And it is just like this love fest everywhere we go. All Every time we go to an event and go to learn something, everyone there is just so excited about learning and loving and sharing and helping the people around them. So I think that the regenerative movement is just, it's everything that I've always wanted truly in my life, living in the society that we've lived in, that I have for the past 51 years. I feel like I finally found a community, and it is the regenerative agriculture community. So I love it.
100%.
Sister, was there something you wanted to ask that I didn't ask?
I think we covered all my questions. I just could gush more and more about my appreciation for y'all and what you're doing, Liz, and thank you, really, from all of us from planet Earth. Thank you.
Thank y'all for what you're doing. Thanks for getting the word out.
Yay.
Yes, we'll have to get you to Lockhart. I know our plans to have you here for First Friday fell through. So next time you get a wild hair and you want to come to a First Friday, let us know. We'd love to get together with you and Tim Ald and anybody else in our area, neck of the woods that you know that we should know. Just have our own little, Regen Ag Party on First Friday.
I love it. Yes.
I love that.
Soon.
All right. So one last time, the website to learn more about Liz, the work she does, the Haney Soil Test, and then also to get more information on the Regenerative Revival, go to agsoilregen.com. And thanks everyone for your time and for sharing your wisdom. You're one of our soil sisters. You're an honorary soil sister, whether you like it or not, Liz.
Well, it's funny. We have our own group of soil sisters. We actually made T-shirts, and it's a group of women in ag that get together every year and we go camping. So now you're part of that too.
Good.
Okay, I'm in. All right, we'll see y'all next time. Thanks for hanging out.
Thank you.
Bye.
Connect with the Soil Sisters at txsoilsisters.co. Submit questions, guest or show ideas, and sponsorship inquiries. The Soil Sisters podcast was created and produced by Joanna Nuding. Editing and sound design are in the capable hands of the PodConnects Podcast Network.